Tony Goldwyn is at the Oregon Historical Society, reading a letter actually written by his 3 times great-grandmother, Mary Coe, who took a treacherous journey in 1852 to reunite with her husband, who was working in Portland.
We left New York December 6th on Monday. In 10 days, we were landed at Aspinwall on Navy Bay. Where's Aspinwall, first of all?
That's a critical clue. Aspinwall is the eastern port on the east coast of Panama.
My God.
She did not go via
With
the
him.
overland trail. She went
Right.
via Panama. And
Across the isthmus.
Right. It's because this is way before the Panama
Right.
Canal.
Wow.
Until the Panama Canal opened in 1914, Americans heading west had 3 options. The most common was to trek cross-country on the Oregon Trail, usually via wagon train. The other choices were faster, 6 to 8 weeks, but more expensive. Travelers could make a long sea voyage around Cape Horn at the tip of South America, or follow the route that Mary Coe took, which required crossing the Isthmus of Panama, a long strip of jungle between the Caribbean Sea and the Pacific Ocean.
And Lawrence hired a boat for $100. Lawrence was her son.
That's her son, okay.
They came together.
Right.
We started up the
It's the Chagres. So they would go by steam paddle boat up the Chagres River.
Chagres River, okay.
And then they would transfer to canoes.
My God.
And then ultimately the last leg of the trip across the Panama Isthmus would have been on the back of a mule. So this was a pretty intense journey for her.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, she was born in 1801, so she's a 52-year-old woman.
Yes. I actually think that's really important to keep in mind as you read the rest of these letters, is her age.
Wow, okay. This next one. Portland, February 12th, 1854. She'd been there a year at this point. Things, in one sense, are rather in a primitive state. At least all that nature has anything to do with the tall trees, but like the native inhabitants, they must soon submit to their manifest destiny. Wow.
Yeah, I think we have some things to talk about.
That's intense. So by native inhabitants, she means the Indians already living in Oregon.
Right.
Was in the idea of manifest destiny, and so that was a sense of mission that both Nathaniel and Mary would have had as their purpose and their raison d'etre, for being
Right.
here in this place. And
Racial ideology of the time, which was very much about white, Northern European descended people really believing that they were physically and culturally superior to non-white peoples. It gives you a sense of what it was like to travel, to make that journey for people who come from pretty homogeneous and relatively sheltered existences in the eastern seaboard.
Is there mention of what they were doing at that time here, or like, is it worth reading more of this letter? Or?
It's not in this letter. This is our next letter, actually,
Okay.
which is going to jump ahead.
Okay. Well, this letter is dated Fort Dalles, March 6th, 1856. Dear friend and cousin, we have been obliged to leave our beautiful sequestered house in the mountain valley, which means that Mary and Nathaniel left Portland and moved to this area to become a settler. For safekeeping under the military, and daily expecting an attack from Kamayakin, the Yakima chief. That's intense. So they had to leave their home because they were worried about being attacked by Indians.
This is just a snippet of the first part of that conflict.
Wow.
In order to learn more about what happens to your third-time great-grandfather and third-time great-grandmother, mother, you need to go to where they were, at the Fort Dalles Museum, to try and figure out what happens next.
Wow, that sounds great. Well, thank you so much for sharing this stuff with me. Now I'm on my way to the Dalles. So
Well, it was great to meet you.
thank you.
Thanks for
so
coming
great
in.
meeting you, yeah. Mary experienced the hardship of the journey and then the hardship of living in this wilderness of Portland, Oregon. And then when she describes just being forced out of her home, that must have been extraordinary. I'm interested to find out more about the conflict with the Indians and how that impacted Mary and Nathaniel's life and having to go and retreat to Fort Dalles because they thought they were going to be under attack. I'm leaving Portland and following the Columbia River east toward the Fort Dalles Museum and the region where Nathaniel and Mary had gone. I'm going to learn more about this history and about the Coe's life with a specialist on Native American history named Andy Fisher.
Welcome to Fort Dalles.
Hey, it's great to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
So where are we?
Well, this is all that remains of the military post where your three-time great-grandparents, Nathaniel and Mary, fled to during the Yakima War.
Wow, okay.
The fort itself was not much to look at even in its day. It was about a mile square. It didn't even have a palisade, so it wasn't walled.
Oh, it wasn't?
And
it was just a collection of buildings?
Right, but formidable enough to deter Indian attack.
Right.
They probably came here just for the protection of the number of people here and the presence of federal troops.
Okay. Would love to kind of get more familiar with the Yakima Wars and what was going on in this part of the country at that time.
Well, in the mid-1850s, this region was just beginning to fill up with settlers.
Right.
And the native people along the mid-Columbia, including the Yakimas, were very nervous that they were going to lose their land.
When gold was discovered in the Oregon Territory in the early 1850s, the U.S. government sought to obtain the land. Local tribes were pressured to sign a treaty in 1855, ceding over 6.4 million acres of their property. In exchange, a small area was to be designated as the tribe's permanent homeland. But when gold miners began trespassing on the Indian land before the treaty was even ratified, hostilities soon led to war.
Well, relations between Indians and whites in this part of the territory had been mostly peaceful. Very little violence until the war began.
Uh-huh. So what do you have for me here?
I have some documents that you might be interested in.
Okay, this is from the New York Semi-Weekly Tribune, dated April 4th, 1856.
Under the title, The Indian War on the Pacific.
I do not believe Indians all saints any more than white men. On the contrary, they are barbarians, often cruel, sometimes treacherous, but seldom ungrateful for kind, considerate treatment. Our emigrants are pitched in upon them without arrangement or notice, many of them rough Western specimens who consider the rights of Indians on par with those of bears and wolves. These emigrants take unceremonious possession of the best lands, fisheries, and every other resource, driving off the savages as if they were so many flies. Of course, hatreds, collisions, revenges, massacres are all but inevitable.
See, from this newspaper in New York, quite a strong criticism of Western settlers in their conduct towards the native population.
Right. I'm wondering what Nathaniel Coe's opinion of all this would be.
I actually have a document here written by Nathaniel Coe.
Okay.
If you want to take a look at it.
So this is the original in his own handwriting?
Yes.
Wow, that's cool.
This comes from the Oregon Historical Society, from his personal papers.
Oh, wow. The Weekly Tribune of April 5th has just arrived. Your editorial letter, headed The Indian War of the Pacific, does great injustice to the citizens of Oregon. I reside on the Columbia River, east of the Cascades, in the vicinity of the difficulties, and have been familiar with them from the first. The cause of the war was the yearly increase of the white population, which already occupies a large part of the country west of the Cascade Mountains, where the Indian tribes are greatly reduced, and some tribes have become extinct. All experience on the Atlantic coast, as well as the Pacific, shows that the Aborigines melt away with presence of civilization. Well, that's a pretty incredible statement, isn't it? That's like a perfect expression of manifest destiny.